Let's talk about home loan interest rates, because there's another question that comes up related to that is how much does the interest rate matter when you're debt recycling? Because the interest is deductible, people might think, well, is it better if it's higher or lower? And then if you're debt recycling, there's an assumption, right, that you want to pay down your home loan as fast as possible and you want to have the cheapest home loan possible. So surely when there's debt involved, like you're technically borrowing to invest here, wouldn't it be better and wouldn't debt recycling be more attractive when home loan interest rates are lower? And wouldn't it be less attractive when rates are higher? I think that's a pretty common query.
It's a very common query, Dave. If you remember, it's a query that might have hit your phone inbox from myself at one point as well, really early on. I actually I've been crediting Dave to make up for some of my snide comments about his blog. And I actually think of all the things in your blog that you've written, Dave, which again, I'll still say is one of the best things I've seen written on the topic. Your commentary around this was super helpful for me, which we can revisit. But I'm an interesting case, I guess, because I jumped in. I don't know what my mortgage interest rate is exactly, but it's about 6%. It might be like 6.1 or something, but like that's when I started debt recycling. You know, you could argue that I started at the worst time. Some people would see it as. But to that question, at least from my perspective, when you're asking, does it really matter? Obviously, the higher the interest rate is, the more money it costs to debt recycle. Like if interest rates are 6% as opposed to 2%, it's going to physically consume more cash to hold that portfolio because, you know, the interest is bigger. Even though the tax deduction is bigger, in real terms, you're still paying more money. But I guess the more relevant part for me, Dave, was that whole, is it not better to wait till interest rates drop to 3 and then go do it? And then it's like why should I go and spend all this money now? And I think it came up originally for me too, Dave, because I was like, man, if I'm paying 6% on the loan and my share portfolio is only returning 5%, aren't I just losing money too sometimes? Or what happens if it goes down? I mean, it'd probably be great for you to share it because I think you've articulated better than me, but like, what's your answer to why don't I just wait for interest rates to hit 4% instead of 6%? Surely it's a better time to get in.
So I suppose there's a couple of ways to look at that. So debt recycling, remember, assumes that you've already decided that investing is more attractive than paying down debt. So assuming that you've decided that investing is more attractive, then when you debt recycle and you add to your portfolio, it's actually more attractive to debt recycle at higher interest rates. And it's also more attractive to debt recycle when you're on a higher tax rate. So both of those things will result in more, let's say, more tax benefits or a more tax effective outcome. Because you say, Hayden, why would I do it now that rates are 6%? But remember, you're already paying your mortgage at 6%. It's not like you're deciding to then borrow more money and invest while rates are 6%. Because remember, we talked about leveraging, borrowing additional money is different to using your current loan and then putting your money in and taking it back out, because you're already paying the current mortgage at 6%. So all you're doing when you're debt recycling is making some of that current loan tax deductible at 6%. So you're not actually borrowing more money, remember? So it's actually more attractive at higher interest rates than it was before. I think that's something that people can get confused by. Obviously home loan, because then it ties into the conversation of should I pay down my home loan or invest? Okay, well, that's a different conversation. So maybe you decide that, well, because interest rates are high, I'd rather pay off my home loan. That's perfectly fine. But if you've decided that it's more attractive to invest, why not debt recycle some of your home loan before you do that?
I think that's totally valid, Dave. I mean, I think you think about through it. I think I can be quite emotional sometimes with it. So I'll just tell you the two things that were really helpful for me with the high interest rate. One was from you, which was another part of your blog where you kind of pointed out it's all well and good to wait till mortgage rates go from 6% to 4%. But one of the problems is that in general, when mortgage rates go down, because interest rates go down, people borrow money and invest it. And that reflects quite often in the public equities market anyway. So whilst you might have saved some money holding off to invest in ETFs, you're now going to be able to buy less ETFs with that money you held off with, probably, you know, like that's a very generalized idea. You might get lucky, but that's the broad market force that's going on. So yeah, I'd buy them now. And in theory, I'm just hoping that by the time interest rates do go down and the equity market heats up again, maybe who knows what'll happen, I would have been like, well, at least I got there early. So now I've got that growth baked into it. That was one of two things for me. So credit to Dave on that one. The other thing that was also really helpful for me, because like you're right about all the choosing to invest thing, Dave, but I have like an irrational paranoia with losing money sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, I have chosen to invest, but what if my money disappears? You know, what if it goes away? So a big thing for me was actually looking at what was something that I believed would pay dividends or grow more than what it would cost me to do it, right? On average. Now, obviously anything can happen. I was investing when COVID went on, but for me, that was like looking at things like say VAS or VGS and being like, which of these looks like it grows clearly more than 6%, so that if I have an average year, I at least know that this wasn't the wrong decision. Even if I only made 1% on my money or 0.5%, at least that it's heading in the right direction. So there was actually weirdly for me a little bit of like asset selection there where I was like, I want to find one right now that just makes me feel better. Even though I know I could survive it and wait till, you know, interest rates go down, I was like, I don't want to feel depressed about it.
Yeah, so when you're yeah, that investment selection is important, right? Because you're assumedly only going to invest and debt recycle if you're going to be earning more than the mortgage rate. Otherwise, you might as well just pay down your mortgage. So if you're not certain or you're not confident that that's going to be the case, then just pay down debt, because you're assuming that you're approaching it or thinking about it in that way, you're going to be getting the same or better return for just paying down your mortgage. So if that's a concern or a worry, then it's probably not the right environment for you to do that. And you might want to wait until interest rates are lower before you then start investing or start debt recycling, because you're not comfortable or not confident that you will actually outpace the rate.
Yeah, like, or you could just do 20% of it too if you have more money to debt recycle. I have that for a friend like that. I have a bunch of friends who are like actually 26 right now who are interested in this topic, and they have about 50 grand in their offset, and they're kind of like, oh, I kind of want to do renovations. I'm kind of nervous. I said, just split up the loan a tiny bit, just like dip your feet in. If too much is too risky, you don't have to pick between, investing all your offset or none of it too. And dipping your feet in, sorry to rant, it's like, I think that's so important, because I find with all these things, if you aren't familiar with it, you just need to put in as little as possible and stare at it for 12 months until you feel like this is a legitimate thing that isn't go through one tax return cycle, a few interest payment cycles, and you'll be like, hey, yeah, this is happening. It's real. This is good. Let's go.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you definitely don't want to take too much risk, especially if you're starting out and you're not quite sure and you're still kind of testing the waters a little bit, or you're not sure of your portfolio, what you want that to look like. Then, definitely worth going in slow just to make sure that you are confident before you go ahead with larger dollar amounts.